to iPhone.
History Network, host of the African History Network show, a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. Today is June 11th, 2018, and we are live, okay? And many of you saw the broadcast I did dealing with Donald Trump's pardons and commutations. I did one dealing with I talked about Alice Marie Johnson, who he gave a commutation to back Wednesday, June 6th. I talked about Trump on Friday, June 8th, talking about he's thinking about giving a pardon to Muhammad Ali, who does not need a presidential pardon. Okay, this was when he was getting ready to go to the G7 summit in Canada, right? Well, you have an article from the Daily Beast, dailybeast.com, as well as AtlantaBlackStar.com, dealing with a longtime friend of Donald Trump, but he was also a campaign advisor, either formally or informally, named Roger Stone. It's also known as the Dirty Trickster Roger Stone. Roger Stone was a friend of Richard Nixon. He was a campaign advisor to Richard Nixon also, okay? And in the article, you have one from the original articles from the Daily Beast, and the AtlantaBlackStar.com picked it up. But it talks about how Roger Stone, a year ago, urged Donald Trump to give a presidential pardon to Marcus Mosiah Garvey. All right? And Marcus Garvey was the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association,
the UNIA,
okay, which was founded in 1914 in Jamaica, okay? And then Garvey comes to the U.S. in 1916, and chapters start to spread. He's convicted of mail fraud. He's set up by the government, by the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, by the Attorney General. He's convicted in 1923. He's going to be deported in 1927. Okay, and Garvey led the largest mass movement of African Americans in the history of this country. Okay, Garvey had somewhere between 4 to 6 million members in the UNIA, basically just here in the U.S. Okay, so I want to deal with this story and deal with some of the history of Marcus Garvey. Okay, and
Malcolm X's father was a Garveyite. And that's what you call people who believed in Garvey's movement, the Pan-African movement, and the UNIA. A very, very, very influential man for his time, yo. Like he said, his membership was over 1 million people. And this is long before the internet and anything else. All you had is written media, written propaganda. So just from his newsletter, his flyers, and his speeches, yo, he was able to organize millions of people in the U.S., millions of black people, to the point where he was actually able to fund a program to buy a cruise liner, like a ship, like a cruise ship, literally. And the Titanic was a part of the White Star Line company. That's the people who produced and launched the Titanic, was the White Star Line. So Marcus Garvey came up with the Black Star Line, and that was for black people. And he bought 2 ships, and he was going to pack these ships full of black people and send their ass back to Africa willingly. Whoever wants to go, get your ass on the Black Star. Let's go back to the motherland. They fucking try to get him on some mail fraud shit, like he said, man, and fucked his whole career up, his whole image, took his businesses away from him, stripped him of all, tried to strip him of all his respect. And there was a rumor that he met with the leader of the KKK, apparently to try to hash some things out and settle some shit. And that story got backfired, and that blew up, and that went against him for talking to the Klan, and they deported his ass, and he died in England. But yo, Marcus Garvey sparked some shit, yo. That's the time with W.E.B. Du Bois, and right around the time that the NAACP was just being organized and shit like that. But then still, that's the same time like Black Wall Street got burnt down and shit like that. So the first uh 20 years of the 1900s was crazy. The first 2 decades of the 20th century, man. That shit was crazy, yo. Like, yeah, the Roaring Twenties. You know what I'm saying? From goddamn that first 20 years of the 1900s, a lot of shit was popping off, man. A lot of shit was popping off, coming right out of the fucking that Wild West shit of the 1800s. Chapter one, fucking shit was changing, man. The whole structure of the country was changing. And early on, they already talk about the fucking Klan and this shit. You're like, you see how far you're into the book? Like 50 pages. You know what I'm saying? That Klan was strong in the 20s, bruh. Like, Prohibition. Buster Keaton. Goddamn, they did talk about in here. Something about the Pan-African movement. I gotta read over this book again. But yeah, that's the time that fucking Marcus Garvey was alive, yo. Like in a really dynamic period of history. For people living at that time, it was just like everyday life. Shit is normal. This is how things are. You know what I'm saying? But when you step back and take that segment out of history and just examine that shit, like a lot of things were changing. That's where the new Red Dead Redemption game comes in at. It's the setting is, oh, I forgot, it's some Midwest state, probably Texas or some crazy shit like that, but the year is 1899. And so it's a story about the outlaws and the cowboys and the train robbers and the horse wranglers and all these motherfuckers. And you know life is being more tamed. The West is being more tamed. Government is growing. uh, the urban culture is growing more, and it's not so much of this Wild West shit anymore. And it's telling the story of, I guess, a posse of outlaws who are trying to come to terms with the fact that the way they do shit is done. That shit is played out, and things are changing. You got to conform or not. You got to get down to lay down.
We know that the anniversary of his birth is coming up August 17th. There's celebrations throughout the country celebrating Marcus Garvey Day. So everybody watching on Facebook and YouTube, share this broadcast on your Facebook page, okay? Invite your friends to tune in. We're broadcasting on YouTube, on Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube, and also our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, all right? And, you'll see I'm going to take a different approach to this story than you may see other people deal with, because I understand history and I understand politics. All right. Also, we have a 48-hour sale going on right now at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a new bundle pack, a 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack. We get 3 of my lectures dealing with the film Black Panther, and 3 of my other presentations is on sale now, $45, regularly $75. That's until Tuesday, June 12th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we'll post the link here on the thread of the broadcast. All right. Okay, so a lot of people, and also I'm going to deal with why President Obama did not give a pardon to Marcus Garvey also. All right. And a lot of people are talking about that and really haven't done any research, and they're getting that wrong as well. All right. Okay. So if you look at this article here from AtlantaBlackStar.com, so Roger Stone is a Republican campaign strategist and longtime advisor to Donald Trump. Incidentally, Roger Stone has not been interviewed by Robert Mueller's investigation, which is an indication that Roger Stone may be a target of the investigation and not a subject or a witness, because usually the Department of Justice does not interview people who are targets of an investigation. They'll interview people who are witnesses or a subject, but usually they don't interview people who are a target. All right. So Roger Stone reportedly made a push to get Marcus Garvey pardoned. Stone has encouraged Donald Trump to consider granting clemency to the Black nationalist leader who died in 1940. And Garvey was convicted of mail fraud in 1923. He served 2 years in prison. He was out on bail. There was an appeals process. He served. He actually goes to prison in 1925. He serves 2 years in prison. He gets his sentence commuted. He gets a commutation from President Calvin Coolidge. Okay, there's a letter writing campaign. There are people advocating on his behalf. So he gets a commutation. He's released from prison in 1927, and he's deported. Okay, because if you see, he was not a citizen of the United States. Okay, Jamaican. So if you're someone who's not a citizen of the United States, you get convicted of a crime, you serve your time, when you get released, you get deported. This is what happened to Garvey. All right. So Roger Stone claimed that he wrote to Donald Trump, quote unquote, a year ago to consider pardoning Marcus Garvey, but Trump has yet to respond to Roger Stone's request, according to the article from the Daily Beast, who reported the story this past Friday, June 8th. Okay, so a lot of people are speculating and all this stuff. First of all, Trump hasn't said anything about this. Number one, let's be very clear. Trump hasn't said anything about this. When we look at the story from the Daily Beast, which was the source article on this, it clearly states that Trump has yet to respond to Roger Stone's request to pardon Marcus Garvey. Okay? So don't get your hopes up, number one. Now, Trump may do it because President Obama may do it. Trump may do it because he's another dead black man. Okay? So we know that Trump gave a pardon to Jack Johnson, first African-American heavyweight champion of the world. Jack Johnson died in 1946. He gave a pardon to him. So it's possible because Marcus Garvey is dead and can't enjoy the pardon, it's quite possible Trump may do it. But Trump hasn't said anything about it. Okay? All right, so now it's unclear what Roger Stone's motivations are, as he's knee-deep in the Robert Mueller Russia investigation, and Roger Stone came under scrutiny after boasting of his ties to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Okay, so keep in mind, Roger Stone has not been interviewed by Mueller's investigation. Okay, Sam Nunberg has, who is a mentee of Roger Stone, but Roger Stone hasn't. So it's suspected that Roger Stone may be a target of the investigation. All right. All right. So now Marcus Garvey was a Pan-Africanist who founded the hugely successful Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League in 1914. It starts in Jamaica, where he's born. He's born in St. Anne's, Jamaica. Okay. So it starts in Jamaica. He comes to the U.S. in 1916. He comes the year after Booker T. Washington dies. Okay. Booker T. Washington died in 1915, and Booker T. Washington was an inspiration to Marcus Garvey. Garvey read Booker T. Washington's book, Up From Slavery, because we know Booker T. Washington was a former slave. And Booker T. Washington admired, Marcus Garvey admired Booker T. Washington's philosophy dealing with economic empowerment for African Americans, okay, and going into the trades and things like this. He admired that. He admired the economic portion that Booker T. Washington was pushing. All right. So now Marcus Garvey became a threat to white officials during this period of time, and was set up by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, who used Garvey's Black Star Line, which was Garvey's line of steamships that he was going to, because he also talked about African Americans going back to Africa as well. Some of us, not all of us going back, but some of us going back, okay? So he had the Black Star Line of steamships, all right? And J. Edgar Hoover used Garvey's Black Star Line Corporation against him and charged him with mail fraud, okay? They sent a black FBI agent or officer / informant into Garvey's organization, basically to set him up, okay? So the revolutionist was given a 5-year prison sentence, all right? He was sentenced in 1923. Only served, he actually served 2 years and some change. We'll get to that. So J. Edgar Hoover, Dr. Julius Garvey is Marcus Garvey's son, okay? Many white nationalists feared one of the most prominent Negro agitators in New York, all right? And his conviction was commutated by President Calvin Coolidge. Quote, Calvin Coolidge said, on condition that he be deported to Jamaica, end quote, all right? Now, Dr. Julius Garvey is the son of Marcus Garvey. And Dr. Julius Garvey said, quote, J. Edgar Hoover targeted him, Marcus Garvey, when he just came out of law school, okay, when J. Edgar Hoover just came out of law school, all right? Quote, he was the new head of the FBI, and he had the first black agent infiltrate his movement. There was no evidence against Garvey. The whole thing was travesty of justice, okay? Or a travesty of justice, right? Okay, so now Garvey was also a major black advocate in Jamaica, and he is heralded as one of the 6 national heroes of Jamaica also, all right? And his politics, conflicted with a lot of the leading African American leaders back at this time, E. Philip Randolph, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, okay? And they're going to organize a campaign, a Garvey Must Go campaign. They're going to organize a campaign against him and appeal to the Attorney General, okay, to get rid of Garvey, all right? Now, there was a campaign towards the end of the last year of President Obama's tenure. In 2016, there was a campaign to get a presidential pardon for Garvey, okay? And President Obama did not give him a presidential pardon, all right? Now, a lot of people are speculating why President Obama did not give a presidential pardon. Most of those people talking really haven't done any research on why, okay? So if you look at the article from the Daily Beast, which is the source article for this story, it's entitled, Roger Stone Encouraged Trump to Pardon Marcus Garvey. This is from Friday, June 8, 2018. Roger Stone encouraged Trump to pardon Marcus Garvey, okay? They talk about it here in the article. All right. And also, Dr. Julius Garvey, Marcus Garvey's son, said he has not pursued getting a pardon for Marcus Garvey under the Trump administration as well. All right. Now, so it talks about how no pardon was granted, and Garvey said he largely dropped his advocacy efforts since since President Obama has left office. In the article, it talks about how under President Obama, the pardons he was given, the commutations, etc., they focused basically more on people alive who could actually enjoy it. Okay. Let's see. Despite the list of advocates, Obama never acted on a request to grant a pardon. Those who were familiar with the ex-president's approach, or President Obama's approach on the matter, said that in general, his team was opposed to granting posthumous exonerations, people who died, posthumous exonerations, believing that resources and attention were best spent on those still living, for whom a pardon or commutation could prove transformative. Because there's a process that you go through. It's the normal process is that the commutation or pardon committee or team in the Department of Justice reviews the case. They make a recommendation. If they recommend that it should be commuted or pardoned, then it goes to the White House for the president to review. That's the normal process. Trump is not going through the normal process. He's doing some other stuff, and he's getting appeals from Sylvester Stallone, Kim Kardashian, things like that. He's going through a whole nother different type of process. But that's the normal process, okay? Actually, if you read the article, and I talked about this before, I talked about it Sunday night when I interviewed Dr. Carl Anderson. Read the article from CNN.com, which talks about why President Obama did not give a commutation to Alice Marie Johnson. Okay, the reason why is because he didn't know about her case, and her case never made it to the White House, to his desk, because it was rejected 3 times in the Department of Justice in their review process. Okay, so a lot of people making speculations, things like that. 99% of the people talking are not providing you with any evidence on what actually happened. I do research. I don't come on here and just start talking. I do research. This is why I'm giving you sources so you can research this information yourself. Proper documentation ends all conversation. You can research this yourself. Okay. CNN.com, June 6, 2018. DOJ denied Alice Johnson's request for commutation 3 times in Obama administration. And they break down why. They break down the process. It never made it to the White House for President Obama to consider it. There's no evidence he knew about this case. The only reason why Trump gave Alice Marie Johnson a pardon is because it was championed by Kim Kardashian. Trump wants to be associated with celebrities. He's always wanted to be associated with celebrities. He wants that photo op with her, and this is why he did the commutation. He did not give her a pardon. He could have given her a presidential pardon. He did not give her a pardon. She served 22 years. She was convicted in 1996. What's the difference between a presidential pardon and a commutation? What's the difference between a presidential pardon and a commutation? Okay. First of all, a commutation wipes out the rest of your sentence. Okay. But it does not wipe that felony conviction off of your record. So Alice Marie Johnson is still a convicted felon. Now, Trump gave Sheriff Joe Arpaio, sheriff from Arizona, he gave him a presidential pardon. Joe Arpaio was in contempt of court. He gave Joe Arpaio a presidential pardon. Okay? And it wiped it off of his record. Now, presidential pardon wipes it off of your record, wipes the conviction off of your record. But a pardon is also an admission of guilt. A presidential pardon is also an admission of guilt. Now, Sheriff Joe Arpaio didn't know that until he was interviewed on MSNBC's The Beat by Ari Melber, who is an attorney. And Ari Melber told him on live TV, you know, when you accepted that presidential pardon, that was an acceptance of guilt. That's what that is, all right? So a presidential pardon wipes out the conviction, wipes it off your record. If you're in prison, you're released from prison, okay? You're no longer a convicted felon. A commutation, you have to serve a significant portion, usually, of the sentence. It wipes out the rest of your prison sentence. If you're in prison, you're released from prison, but you're still a convicted felon. It's still on your record, okay? So it limits you in the type of jobs you can have, where you can live. You can't vote unless you go through a process in that particular state to get your voting rights back, things like this, all right? So people have to understand that. All right, so the real question is, why didn't Trump give her a presidential pardon as opposed to a commutation? He gave Scooter Libby a presidential pardon. Scooter Libby revealed the name of a CIA operative. He gave a pardon to Scooter Libby on April 13, 2018. Okay, white man. Scooter Libby. Offense, obstruction of justice, false statements, perjury, 2 counts. That's a felony. Those are 2 felonies. Perjury. Those are 2 felonies. He was convicted in the District of Columbia, sentenced 30 months in prison. Those are felonies. 2 years supervised release, $250,000 fine in June 14, 2007. Trump gives him a presidential pardon. Interesting. But also, what Trump is doing, and there's an article from the Huffington Post that deals with this, Trump is suspected giving presidential pardons to people who have been convicted of things like obstruction of justice, campaign finance contribution fraud, like Dinesh D'Souza, who Trump gave a pardon to on May 31st, 2018. See, I do research. Most people have never even seen this. What is this? This is from justice.gov. What's justice.gov? Justice.gov is the Department of Justice official website. What is this called? Pardons granted by President Donald Trump, and it breaks down the pardons up until May 31st. When I printed this up on June 9th, Saturday, June 9th, Alice Marie Johnson was not on here. But these are the presidential pardons Trump has given. This is straight from the Justice Department. Most people don't even know this exists. Okay? So, all right. How's everybody doing? Okay, so you gotta research this, but it appears that Trump is possibly sending messages to those who are potential witnesses, and he's giving pardons to people who are convicted of similar things that witnesses have been charged with. Okay. And also he's using the pardons to change the news cycle as well. That's the other thing. He's using the pardons to change the news cycle. Read this article from HuffingtonPost.com. HuffingtonPost.com, written by S.V. Date, D-A-T-E. Trump's pardons may send a message to allies caught up in Russia investigation. Trump's pardons may send a message to allies caught up in Russia investigation. All right, check this out. We'll post this here on the thread of the broadcast, because you gotta pay attention to what's going on. When I interviewed Dr. Claude Anderson last night, we talked about a lot of the fraud of Trump. Okay, and you gotta pay attention to what's going on. Midterm elections are coming up. If you don't pay attention to what's going on, you're gonna be hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, and run amok once again, like a lot of people were in the 2016 election cycle who didn't vote or voted for the wrong person. They voted for somebody, they voted for the wrong person, they voted for somebody who didn't have a chance in hell of winning or something like that. Okay? Just totally ridiculous. All right. So, those watching on Facebook, share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Those watching on YouTube, we're broadcasting on YouTube, Michael Imhotep, I-M-H-O-T-E-P on YouTube, okay? All right, so I want to get into some history of Marcus Garvey, because a lot of people really don't know about Marcus Garvey, who Marcus Garvey was. I was speaking at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History a couple weeks ago. I think it was May 29th. And I was speaking to a group of school children, 5th grade to like 12th grade. And they knew who George Washington was. who was a slave owner. But most of them didn't know. It was about 50 there. Most of them didn't know who Marcus Garvey was. Okay, so that's problematic. All right. Also, we'll come to that in just a second here. Be sure to register for the online courses that I teach. We have them all on demand. We have a 6-course bundle pack. It includes Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That's a 14-hour, 7-session online course. It's all on demand. We deal with thousands of years of history, do a PowerPoint presentation, video clips, everything. Also, the 10 courses in the bundle pack. It includes African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. Great African women in history, the mothers of civilization, and some others as well. It's on sale right now, $60, regularly $130. It's all on demand, and this helps support the African History Network when you register for the online courses, buy our DVDs. When you donate to us, that helps us to keep doing the research, pay the bills, stay on the air, etc. Okay, so you can register for that. You can watch it around the world on your smartphone, your computer, your tablet. All right, and it's also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage of our website. Okay, so this information from CNN.com dealing with Alice Marie Johnson and why President Obama did not give her a commutation. I'm going to post this here on the thread, so when we talk about these things, we can deal with facts and evidence and not feelings and emotions, because a lot of people are talking about it, but what they're saying is not accurate, and they're not providing any sources either. All right. Okay, so let's look at some of the history of Marcus Garvey. Right. So Marcus Garvey is a very, very fascinating figure in our history. Marcus Garvey was a giant. Garvey comes along at a time. I mean, he's born in 1887 in Jamaica. This is at a time when Frederick Douglass is still alive. I mean, you're talking about just 22 years. 22 years after slavery in the U.S. ends. The Civil War ends June 2nd, 1865. 13th Amendment is ratified December 6, 1865. It's adopted December 18th, 1865. December 24th, 1865, we have a terrorist organization that's organized in this country right after the enslaved Africans are freed. They were called the Ku Klux Klan. December 24th, 1865, the Ku Klux Klan was founded in Pulaski, Tennessee. Okay. Also, very quickly speaking of June in the Civil War, those in Atlanta, I'll be in Atlanta this weekend. June 15th, Friday, June 15th through Sunday, June 17th. I'll be at Morris Brown College for the huge Juneteenth celebration. They do a 3-day Juneteenth celebration. Last year, 5,000 people came out. I'll be there all 3 days. I'll have a vendor table. I'll be speaking on Saturday. So come on out. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for more information about that as well. It's a free event. Come on out. Okay. All right. So when we look at Marcus Garvey, Garvey was born on Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. He was born August 17th, 1887. Okay. He was a publisher. He was a journalist, entrepreneur. He was a black nationalist, orator, and founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. Okay. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. Okay. Now, prior to the 20th century, you had African American leaders like Prince Hall, Martin Delany, Edward Wilmot Blyden, and Henry Highland Garnett, and they advocated the involvement of the African diaspora. Okay. The involvement of the African diaspora in African affairs. Okay. Now, Garvey was unique in advancing Pan-Africanism or Pan-African philosophy to inspire a global mass movement focusing on Africa, commonly known as Garveyism. And Garvey influenced countless African American leaders, whether it was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, whether it was Malcolm X. We know Malcolm X's parents, okay, were Garveyites as well. Malcolm grew up hearing the message of Marcus Garvey. Okay, he grew up having pride, having pride in who he was, having black pride, things like this. Okay, until he was diverted, his father's killed, his mother is committed to an insane asylum in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He gets the family broken up. He goes to a foster home, drops out of school, gets involved in criminality, things like this, right?
New York.
Okay, so
crazy ass life,
but we see countless leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., are influenced by Marcus Garvey. All right, and we know that Elijah Muhammad was a teacher to Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, and we know that Elijah Muhammad was influenced by Marcus Garvey as well. And some sources say, I've heard that Elijah Muhammad was actually a member of the UNIA as well. Okay. All right. So, so promoted by the UNIA as a movement of African redemption, Garveyism would eventually inspire others, ranging from the Nation of Islam to the Rastafari movement, which proclaims, the Rastafari movement proclaims Garvey to be a prophet also.
This is Dr. Gleason's
They say Garvey was a prophet. They say motherfucking Haile Selassie was a prophet.
Now, the intention of the movement of Garveyism was for those of African ancestry to quote-unquote redeem Africa and for the European colonial powers to relinquish the continent, okay? Relinquish the continent back to African people. His essential ideas about Africa were stated in an editorial in the Negro World. Now, this was his newspaper publication. This was the newspaper of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And when you study the Nation of Islam, and you study the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and you study the UNIA, they all had a newspaper. So they can communicate with people. They can get their message out unfiltered. They can get that message out directly to the people. They all had newspapers. But the UNIA came before these other organizations came along, okay? So the intention of the movement was for those of African ancestry to redeem Africa and for the European colonial powers to relinquish the continent. Garvey's essential ideas about Africa were stated in an editorial in the Negro World entitled African Fundamentalism. African Fundamentalism, where Garvey wrote, quote, "Our union must know no clime, boundary, or nationality." Okay? Let us hold together under all climes, 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 and in every country. Okay, end quote. So Garvey was born in St. Anne's Bay of St. Anne's Parish in Jamaica, okay, August 17th, 1887, to Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr., okay, and Sarah Jane Richards, okay. She was a domestic worker and farmer. Of their 11 siblings, of his 11 siblings, only Garvey and his sister Indiana survived childhood. Okay, so you're also dealing with a period of time where you're going to have a lot of African American children who die during birth as well, and you had a higher rate back then, most likely than today, of African American women dying during childbirth as well. Now, Garvey's father was known to have a large library, and it was from his father that he gained. His love for reading. Sometime in the year 1900, Marcus Garvey Jr. entered into an apprenticeship with his uncle Alfred Burroughs. Okay, and he learned to be a printer. Okay. Like Garvey's father, Burroughs had an extensive library of which Garvey made good use. So around the age of 14, Garvey left St. Ann's Bay for Kingston, Jamaica, where he found employment as a compositor at the printer of P.A. Benjamin Limited. The initials P.A. Benjamin Limited. So he was a master printer and foreman at P.A. Benjamin Limited when in November of 1907 he was elected vice president of the Kingston Union. So Garvey gets fired from his job when he joins this union. When he joined a strike by the printers in 1908. Okay, so he joins the union. They're going to go on strike. The printers go on strike in 1908. All right, and he gets fired from his job. So he gets blacklisted, okay, for his stance in this strike, for being involved in this strike. He gets blacklisted. He later found work at the government printing office. Now, in 1909, Garvey's newspaper, The Watchman was published, but it only lasted for 3 issues. In 1910, Garvey leaves Jamaica and he begins traveling throughout the Central American region. He lived in Costa Rica for several months, where he worked as a timekeeper on a banana plantation. And he began work as an editor for a daily newspaper there called the La Nacional, Nacionale, Nacionale, okay, in 1911. Now, later that same year, he moved to Colón, Panama, where he edited a tri-weekly paper before returning to Jamaica in 1912. So you have to understand the importance of the newspapers and the black-owned newspapers back in the early 1900s. This is before television. When we look at the civil rights movement, we look at, say, from 1955 to 1970. If it had not been for black newspapers, black media, number one, but especially black newspapers, you would not have had a civil rights movement. Okay? Black radio played a big part, but especially black newspapers. They played a huge part in getting this information out, and also Jet Magazine as well. Because, see, when Emmett Till is killed August 28, 1965 in Money, Mississippi, and they have a funeral for Emmett Till, they posted the picture, if I remember correctly, it was on the cover of Jet Magazine. I know it was inside, but I think it was on the cover. But on Jet Magazine, they posted the picture of the open casket and the disfigured face and head of Emmett Till, okay? And this goes all across the country. All right, now, so after years of working in the Caribbean, Garvey leaves Jamaica to live in London from 1912 to 1914. Okay, so he got to travel at a young age, and as he's traveling, he's seeing that African people basically are at the bottom wherever he travels in general. Okay, so when in London he attended Birkbeck College, and he worked for the African Times and Orient Review, and sometimes spoke at Hyde Park's Speaker's Corner. All right, and I was looking for my book, Pan-Africanism for Beginners. Where is it? Okay, it's somewhere around here. All right. Now, during his travels, Garvey became convinced that uniting black people was the only way to improve our conditions. Uniting black people was the only way to improve our conditions, okay? In that respect, he departed England on June 14th, 1914. aboard the SS Trent, reaching Jamaica on July 5th, 1914. The Universal Negro Improvement Association was founded in August of 1914, okay, when he gets back to Jamaica, as a means of uniting all of Africa and its diaspora into one grand racial hierarchy, okay? Now, Amy Ashwood would later become Garvey's first wife, and she was among the founders of the UNIA, okay? Now, as the group's first president, Marcus Garvey's goal was to unite all people of African ancestry of the world to one great body to establish a country and absolute government of their own. To quote, unite all people of African ancestry of the world to one great body to establish a country and absolute government of their own. So according to Marcus Garvey, while he was traveling in the La Habra, the title of the organization was the result of a conversation that he had with the West Indian and the West Indian's wife. Okay. Now during the discussion, he quote further learned of the horrors of native life in Africa. End quote. Following much reflection, the following day and night about what he learned, quote, the vision and thought came to name the organization the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, okay? So, like I said earlier, Garvey was inspired by Booker T. Washington, okay? So after corresponding with Booker T. Washington, Garvey arrives in the U.S. on March 23rd, 1916, to give a lecture tour and to raise funds for the establishment of a school in Jamaica, modeled after Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute, okay? But Booker T. Washington died in 1915, okay? So he finds out when he gets here that Washington has passed away, all right? So Garvey visited Tuskegee Institute and afterward paid visits to a number of black leaders. After moving to New York, he found work as a printer by day. He was influenced by Hubert Harrison, okay, who was a African-American philosopher. He was a great thinker. He was known as the Black Socrates, Hubert Harrison. And at night, he would speak on street corners, okay, much like he did in London's Hyde Park. You know, you study Malcolm X. Malcolm X spoke on street corners. Malcolm X spoke at Elder Michaud's bookstore there in Harlem, all right? So, and in Harlem, you know, you had a lot of the activists and ministers, preachers, things like this who would speak out on street corners. It was then that Garvey perceived a leadership vacuum among people of African ancestry, especially here in the U.S. So on May 9th, 1916, he held his first public lecture in New York City at St. Mark's Church and underwent a 38-state speaking tour, all right? So in May of 1917, Garvey and 13 other African Americans, black people, formed the first UNIA division outside of Jamaica. Okay, it starts in Jamaica in 1914. 1917, they formed the first chapter outside of Jamaica in May of 1917 and began advancing ideas that promoted social, political, and economic freedom for blacks, for African Americans. Okay, so this is 8 years after the NAACP. And the NAACP is formed to help fight against the lynching this caused them to, the activists, black activists at the time, and the white liberal sympathizers, it caused them to think that maybe you needed to have a interracial
Shit.
to the race. Okay, so approximately 57 founders of the NAACP. Okay, only 7 were African American. You can go to NAACP.org, official website of the NAACP, and click on history. They'll tell you that themselves. All right. The NAACP came out of the when you had the Niagara movement, founded in 1905. Dr. W.B. Du Bois and others, the Niagara movement. The Niagara movement comes about because of a split that takes place in the Afro-American League. The Afro-American League was a precursor to the Niagara movement. This was another African-American organization, and they had an economic empowerment platform. The Afro-American League was founded in 1898, and they were actually called Afro-American, because the term Afro-American did not start in the 1960s. The term Afro-American goes back to the 1830s. Okay, so the term Afro-American did not start in the 1960s. All right, so you have a split about around 1903. You have a split that takes place in the Afro-American League. You have a pro-Booker T. Washington faction, and then you have another faction that's with Dr. W.B. Du Bois. So Du Bois leaves the Afro-American League, and they formed the Niagara movement. The Niagara movement is then going to lead to the NAACP being founded in 1909. And William Monroe Trotter was one of the ones, he was with the Niagara movement, but he was one of the ones with I think he was with William Trotter, okay? But what happened was that Trotter he helped organize the NAACP, but when you research William Monroe Trotter, and blackpast.org has a good article about him, blackpast.org, William Monroe Trotter did not join the NAACP because he was leery of the white money that was and the white liberals that were in the NAACP. He was liberal. He was leery of that. So he did, even though he helped to organize the NAACP, he did not join. Okay, William Monroe Trotter, that's a fantastic brother. You know, I've done a presentation dealing with him also. That's a very interesting brother. One of the things the NAACP did, and William Monroe Trotter also, is when the movie The Birth of a Nation debuted in 1915. It debuted February 8, 1915. The movie The Birth of a Nation caused race riots in the streets, and it very negatively depicted African Americans. All the negative stereotypes of African Americans were depicted in this movie. Well, the NAACP organized protests against this movie, and when it came to Boston, William Monroe Trotter organized protests against the movie. Okay, because we understood it was dehumanizing to us. You're dealing at a time when they're fighting against lynchings, and this movie showed the Ku Klux Klan to be the hero. Okay, so we knew when we were under attack. We had a better sense of when we were under attack, and we took action. Today, we'll sit up and watch Empire every week and don't understand that TV show is the birth of a nation of today. It shows a very dysfunctional African American family, very negative, degrading images of African Americans. But we'll willingly sit up and watch it when 100 years ago we would protest against things like that. All right, so how's everybody doing? Hey, if you're just tuning in, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History.
Never watched the episode of fucking Power. I've never watched the episode of Empire. I don't know. Like you said, there's just something about those shows, man. Even I tried to watch Luke Cage, and even then, it's just like they still make black people look bad. Why can't you just have one show where all the black people are the good guys and everybody else is the bad guys? But no, it's always somehow you got to pull it back into some black on black violence, and this is why it is, and black people can't be trusted, and they're homosexual, and they're promiscuous, and uh, not very intelligent, and it always comes like that, yeah. I get so tired of seeing all the fucking negative stereotypes placed on black people all the fucking time. That's one of my favorite reasons I like the fucking Game of Thrones and especially The Walking Dead, yo. Like, most of the black people in The Walking Dead are fucking badasses. You know what I'm saying? They're just good people trying to survive, and there are some loyal fucking badass motherfuckers. And I like when you write characters like that because all black people don't fit this generic ass stereotype, you know, and it's weird. And I like to watch programs that show a diversity in the black personality. So in Game of Thrones, that shit barely got any black people in it. All the fucking troubles and problems from that shit is fucking white people doing old treacherous ass shit. Except I don't like the fact that, you know, the Dothraki they make them seem like savages, and they're not black people, but they do have some black actors to play those parts, but for the most part it's just like Middle Eastern looking people, or like Arab looking people. And it's like, once again, like, oh, if somebody has to be fucking savages, they gotta be like black or brown people. Why every time you gotta make those kind of people be savages? Yeah, there's an ashtray right here. Exactly. Race don't matter when everybody's trying to die. I mean, when zombies are trying to eat everybody. But like, Michonne is one of my favorite characters, yo. And I don't do a lot of fucking pop art, but she's the character Michonne is one of the TV stars that I've painted, and I don't like painting motherfucking like pop stars and TV stars and shit. But the character Michonne is so fucking badass. Yeah. Like, I had to paint Michonne one time. Damn. I took a couple days off from the gym, man. So I got up in this bitch early today. What time is it? Yeah, it's 8:30. I've been up since about 5 though. Damn. But I cannot wait for The Walking Dead to come back or something. I need something to watch. Some type of entertainment. Like I said, I've been watching Impulse. It's a YouTube original. But I'm almost done with that shit. It's like, damn. Another good show. Like, I do like being entertained. It's just hard for me to find entertainment that I like. So when I find some shit, man, I'll binge watch that shit, and it's like, fuck. Alright, now that's gone. And, yeah, what I'm watching, Impulse. That's a pretty good show. Doesn't have a lot of black people in it. It has one main black character, and they do make her a positive character. So she's a police officer, and she's trying to figure out part of this fucking crime, and not knowing that, you know, somebody in her department is helping the fucking bad guys and trying to get her off the case so she doesn't find out too much shit. And but she's like a bulldog, so she's like trying to do real good police work and figure this shit out, and just, you know, be a real good cop, you know. And so I like that character, but it has this heavy sci-fi story going on, which I'm always a big science fiction fan, especially of, you know, shit like the impossible, because there's teleportation that goes on, and there's a group of people who can teleport, and it's really weird right now, because like I'm almost through with the first season, and they're not really giving you a lot of background about this teleportation power, and it seems like the people who know about it are still trying to figure it out themselves, like it's some type of new discovery in the past couple decades, and they're trying to see, is this like a genetic trait, where does this come from? They're working with some people who have the ability to control it and trying to study them, and but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's such a rare occurrence that they try to find everybody with this ability, and I guess they're running out of people to test or something, and then there's this girl who develops the ability of teleportation, and so now this little secret group is trying to track her down and fucking put her on a dissection table and take her apart and see what makes her tick and shit like that. But it's your basic like Spider-Man shit. Oh, kid gets superpowers. Bad guys try to find kid with superpowers. Kids try to stop bad guys. Basically. But it's well written. The acting is pretty damn tight. Even there's one character named Towns. He's supposed to, I don't know. They says he has autism or something like that, or maybe they give him some type of slight handicap, but the actor still plays it well, and it's not awkward. It seems, I hate when actors try to play somebody with a disability when they don't actually have that disability. That's why I really did like the fact that in the show Breaking Bad, the son was autistic, but they actually found a real actor who had the disability to play that character, and he did a magnificent job. Like that, I don't know, the son in that show is like one of my favorite characters too, yeah. But this dude, you can tell like this actor really, there's nothing wrong with him, but he's playing okay, boss. But he's playing a character that has this disability or special needs. I've really been wanting to find some new anime to watch lately, but I can't really find shit. So I always resort back to lectures and documentaries. Yay! Because I'd rather be educated if I can't find some good entertainment.
Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. With talking about Marcus Garvey, and we're talking about you had an article, two articles, one from the Daily Beast and AtlantaBlackStar.com. Picked up the article from the Daily Beast, and this deals with a longtime advisor to Donald Trump named Roger Stone. Roger Stone, okay? And Roger Stone said that a year ago he urged Donald Trump to issue a presidential pardon to Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who was convicted of mail fraud in 1923. And he ends up serving 2 years in prison. But he still has, even though he died in 1940, he still has the conviction on his record. So by no means is Roger Stone ran to African Americans, but for some reason he said that he's trying to get Trump to do this presidential pardon. Now Trump has not responded as of yet. As of we don't have any response as of June 9th, June 8th or June 9th from Trump. No response. So I wouldn't hold my breath on this one. Okay, and Roger Stone wanted Trump to issue this
don't know who the fuck
this
Marcus
past
Garvey is.
February for African History Month as well. All right.
Who?
We're doing some of the
Garvey.
history of Marcus Garvey because a lot of people don't know the history of Garvey. And I was speaking to a group of African American students back May 29th at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Now, out of 50 of them, most of them knew about George Washington, but only a handful knew about Marcus Garvey. Okay? All right, and Garvey influenced countless African American leaders. He led the largest mass movement of African people in the history of this country.
And once again, that's fucked up because, like, if you would have asked me at 15 who is Marcus Garvey, I wouldn't have fucking known. Why? Because I know George Washington. They teach me that shit. That's what I learned in school. Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, the Gettysburg Address. Nobody told me Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. You know what I'm saying? Nobody taught me about that shit. And it's fucking sad. Like, and that's American history. That is American history. That dude came to America and started a national movement. And even during Black History Month, it's just like Dr. King and George Washington Carver. And it's like every year. Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. I thought that shit was a series of tunnels. These motherfuckers walking through tunnels and shit all the way to the north. Nobody never really led me to the literature to really further expound on that shit and understand what the fuck it all meant. It's like sad. Shit is sad as fuck, yeah. And it is so fucking true. Like, if you don't know your history, you really don't know who you are, or as a people, you don't know where you're going. You don't know how the fuck you got to where you're at now. And it's like, it's power. That's all it is, man. Everything is fucking power. Who has the most power? I got more power than you. I'm going to educate my kids and your kids the way I want to, because I have the power to do so, and you can't stop me. That's all it's ever been. And when people realize they have more power than they perceive, well, then you become a threat. But it is truly liberating. So I realize I have the power to educate my children a certain way, and I utilize that and exercise that power to the fullest extent. because you're not just going to get trapped in this very skewed perspective of history and reality, and of the world in general, how it operates, how it functions, who is in control of power. The dollar don't fucking matter. It's all about resources. Where the resources come from, and who has the power over that shit.
Okay. In the early 1920s, late teens, early 1920s. Okay. All right. So we'll get back to Garvey here in just a second. Hey, be sure to register for the online courses. If you like this type of information, be sure to register for the online courses that I teach. We have a bundle pack. They're all on demand. We have a bundle pack where you get 10 in a bundle pack. They include Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That is a 14-hour, 7-session online course. We deal with thousands of years of history, do a PowerPoint presentation. We have video clips. The 10-course bundle pack is on sale right now for $60, regularly $130. It also includes African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. It also includes great African women, the history, the mothers of civilization. All right. So it's available right now. We posted a link here on the thread of our broadcast on Facebook, and we'll post a link here on YouTube as well. You can also go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and you can sign up there as well. All right. Okay. All right, so we're broadcasting on YouTube, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube, and our Facebook fan page, the African History Network on YouTube. We've got Antonio. We've got, we have LL Lewis. We've got, if we have any trolls, let me know who the trolls are so I can get rid of them. Okay. We've got, how's everybody doing on YouTube? How's everybody doing on Facebook? Let's see, we got Antonio Brown, Antonio McNeil. Who else? Got Chocolate Chip. Just a few of the people on YouTube, okay? And on Facebook, we've got, okay, somebody sent me messages here on Facebook. We've got Mansa Musa, Timothy, just a few of the people here. Sean, Sis Ray, Danielle, Willie. Okay, just a few of the people here on Facebook. Share this broadcast on your pages. Invite your friends to tune in also. All right.
Richest man in the world.
Okay, so let's continue here. All right, so on July 2nd of 1917, you have the East St. Louis riot that breaks out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and on July 8th, Marcus Garvey delivered an address entitled "The Conspiracy of the East St. Louis Riot." Okay, and you're gonna have a lot of African Americans who were beaten up, killed in this riot, the East St. Louis Riot of 1917. I've actually done a presentation dealing with that as well. Okay, so Marcus Garvey gave a speech entitled "The Conspiracy of the East St. Louis Riot." This was at Lafayette Hall in Harlem, New York. Now, during the speech, Garvey declaimed that the riot was, quote, one of the bloodiest outrages against mankind. By October of 1917, rancor within the UNIA set in. A split occurred in the Harlem Division, with Marcus Garvey enlisted to become the head of the division, although he still technically held the same position in Jamaica as well. Because remember, the UNIA starts in Jamaica. So Garvey next focused on developing a program to improve the conditions of those of African ancestry, okay, at home and abroad under the UNIA auspices. On August 17th, 1918, so that's his birthday, August 17th, 1918, publication of the widely distributed Negro World newspaper began, where Marcus Garvey worked as an editor up until November of 1920. By 1919, the membership of the organization had grown to over 2 million, all right? So we know that, okay, so this is during 1918, we know World War I ends in 1918.
Yeah, World War I was 1914 to 1918.
What's known as the Great Migration, right around that time, 1915. It starts basically during World War I. World War I from 1914 to 1918, yeah, you have about 5 million men who go fight in World War I. The majority of them are white men. And when they leave to go fight in World War I, they had jobs, okay? But when they leave, this creates a labor vacuum in these factories up north. So you have a lot of these northern factories who are going to market and lure African Americans from the South, from the cotton fields, from the farms, from sharecropping, lure them up north to come work in these factories. So you have 5 million African from 1915 to 1960, about 1960. You have 5 million African Americans, some sources will put it at 6 million, that migrate from the South up north and they go out west. Okay, they go on to Los Angeles and Oakland, California, things like this, but they go up north and out west. This is known as the Great Migration. And when they're moving into these new cities, it causes racial tensions to flare also. It's going to lead to various race riots, things like that. 1919, so World War I ends in 1918. 1919 is known as the Red Summer. The Red Summer, because you had over 25 major race riots in this country. These white men came back home from World War I. They had jobs when they left, but now it's African Americans and immigrants doing these jobs. So this causes tensions to flare all across the country. And you have African Americans, and also see these white men, they're bringing back with them weaponry, they're bringing back skills on how to fight and how to kill that they learned in the war. So you have bloodshed. You know, James Weldon Johnson, who wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing, James Weldon Johnson called it the Red Summer because he said the streets of America were flowing with blood. This is why it's called the Red Summer. You have over 25 major race riots that take place in 1919. Okay? So this is all taking place when the UNIA is gaining momentum. And most of the chapters of the UNIA basically are going to be in northern states, the majority of them. So Garvey also gains an audience with these African Americans who are migrating from the South up north as well. He's gaining an audience with them also. All right. So on August 17th, 1918, publication of the widely distributed Negro World newspaper began, where Garvey worked as an editor up until 1920. By June of 1919, the membership of the organization had grown to over 2 million, and 1919 is the Red Summer. On June 27th, 1919, the Black Star Line of Delaware was incorporated by the members of the UNIA with Garvey as president. By September, this was the steamship line, the Black Star Line. By September, the organization obtained its first ship, okay? Much fanfare surrounded the inspection of the SS Yarmouth and its rechristening as the SS Frederick Douglass. Garvey renames it the SS Frederick Douglass on September 14, 1919. Such a rapid accomplishment garnered attention from many. One person who noticed what was going on was Edwin P. Kilroe, Kilroe, Edwin P. Kilroe. He was assistant district attorney for the county of New York, assistant district attorney for the county of New York. And Edwin P. Kilroe began an investigation into the activities of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and Marcus Garvey without finding any evidence of wrongdoing or mismanagement. After being called to Edwin P. Kilroe's office numerous times without any resolution, Marcus Garvey wrote an editorial on Kilroe's activities for the Negro world. Now, Marcus Garvey was arrested and indicted for criminal libel in relation to the article, but charges were dismissed after Garvey published a retraction. Now, while in his Harlem office in October of 1919, Marcus Garvey received a visit from a man by the name of George Tyler. George Tyler. Now, George Tyler told Marcus Garvey that Edwin P. Kilroe had sent him to kill Garvey. Tyler then pulls out a .38 caliber revolver and fires 4 shots, wounding Marcus Garvey in the right leg and on his scalp. Marcus Garvey was taken to the hospital, and George Tyler was arrested. The next day, George Tyler apparently committed suicide by jumping from the 3rd floor of the Harlem jail while he was being taken to his arraignment. So there was an assassination attempt on Garvey's life. According to George Tyler, he said it was Edwin P. Kilroe who had sent him, and Edwin P. Kilroe was the assistant district attorney for the county of New York. Now, by August of 1920, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, claimed 4 million members. That month, the International Convention of the UNIA was held, with delegates from all over the world in attendance. Over 25,000 people filled Madison Square Garden on August 1st of 1920 to hear Marcus Garvey speak, okay? So it's going to be at this convention where Marcus Garvey, where the UNIA creates the what's known as the Pan-African flag, the red, black, and green, okay? It's going to be at this convention that this takes place, all right? And we're going to flip over here and take a look at this here. Let's see just a second here. All right. Let me bring this slide up. How's everybody doing? Okay, let me bring this slide up here. All right, just a second. My option is not coming up. Hold on, I want you to see this. All right, on okay, we got Reese. Facebook got Erica. All right, how you doing, Erica? All right, okay, here we go. Now it's coming up. A little delay. With this option, I'm going to share the screen. I want to show you this here. All right. Here's what I showed. This is a slide from my presentation. We have a 48-hour sale going on right now. 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. One of the presentations I did dealing with the film Black Panther was a presentation I did for children. I think it was May 29th at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. And I talked about the film Black Panther, but I also talked about Marcus Garvey. So the Pan-African flag, also called the Marcus Garvey flag, UNIA the UNIA flag, Afro-American flag, or Black Liberation flag, was designed to represent people of the African diaspora, and as one scholar put it, to symbolize quote unquote black freedom symbol, symbolize black freedom symbol. Okay. Now, the Pan-African flag's colors each had symbolic meaning. Red stood for blood, both the blood shed by Africans who died in their fight for liberation and the shared blood of the African people. Black represented black people or African people, and green was a symbol of growth and the natural fertility of Africa. Okay, or they may say green represents the land, the green land of Africa, the grass, things like this, the green land, the fertility of the land. It was now the Pan-African flag was adopted August 13th, 1920, at this international convention that the UNIA had, where they had 25,000 people in attendance. For more information, check out this article from NPR.org, National Public Radio, NPR.org. On Flag Day is June 14th, right? On Flag Day, remembering the red, black, and green flag. On Flag Day, remembering the red, black, and green flag. This article came out June 14, 2017, all right? So what a lot of people don't know is that in the film Black Panther, you have symbolically a representation of the red, black, and green. So Ryan Coogler, in an interview, in a segment, a video from Vanity Fair magazine, Ryan Coogler talks about in the scene in Black Panther in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong casino. He talks about Lupita Nyong'o wearing green, Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, wearing black, and Danae Guerrero wearing the red or the pink, and this represents the red, black, and green. He talked about the Pan-African flag. He talked about the colors of the Pan-African flag. So he put this in the film, in the actual video. He talks about the symbolism that he put in the film. All right. Okay, so let's continue here. And I'm going to post the link again because we have a 48-hour sale going on. Those were some slides from the presentation I did on the film Black Panther for children, okay? And it's a 6 DVD bundle pack. It's on sale $45. Regularly, regularly $75. You get 3 of my presentations dealing with the film Black Panther. And also you get 3 other presentations, including Malcolm X 50 years later. Why is he still relevant? Human guinea pigs, the history of the Tuskegee experiment on the Negro male. That's the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male. A lot of people talk about that but really don't understand it. So it was supposed to last 6 to 9 months, ended up lasting about 40 years from about 1933, 34 to 1973. And contrary to popular belief, the U.S. government did not inject the men with syphilis. First of all the men did not have syphilis. Anytime you do an experiment, you have a control segment. Yeah, this segment does not have the stimulus. This segment does not experience the stimulus. You have another segment that you alter. You have another segment that you do the experiment on. So all the men in the Tuskegee experiment did not have syphilis, okay? 1. 2, the U.S. government did not inject them with syphilis, all right? You had a segment who had a latent form of syphilis, an early stage of syphilis, when basically there are no symptoms. It goes undetected, okay? So there's a lot of, I hear a lot of people talk about it, but a lot of people really don't understand the Tuskegee experiment, the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male. So that's one of the presentations. And then also Light of Ancient Egypt Awakens the African Mind to Economic Empowerment. Okay. And then we have 3 presentations with the film Black Panther, including my 3-hour presentation of Black Panther Analysis, African Culture, History, and Afrofuturism. And then we have lessons from the film Black Panther, economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, and how to Wakanda the vote. All right, and let's see, what is it, July 13th through the 15th, I'll be back in Atlanta for the Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo. The Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo. So most people who know me know the third weekend in July, I'm in Atlanta. I'm usually one of the presenters there, and I'm a vendor. So I'll be back there in Atlanta the third weekend in July for this Black Homeschooling Expo. And I speak on Sunday. And my presentation will be on lessons from the film Black Panther, economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, and how to Wakanda the vote. Okay, so those in Atlanta, come check me out there. And visit LiberatedMindsExpo.com, LiberatedMindsExpo.com for more information dealing with the Black Homeschooling Conference. All right. So if you want to learn about homeschooling your children, if you already homeschool your children, they have experts in homeschooling African American children, especially from the African Center perspective. They have resources, books, DVDs, curriculums. So check it out, LiberatedMindsExpo.com. All right. So let's continue here. All right. So another of Garvey's ventures, right, was the Negro Factories Corporation, And his plan called for creating the infrastructure to manufacture every marketable commodity in every big U.S. industrial center, as well as in Central America, the West Indies, and Africa by black labor for blacks. So what he was trying to do, all the things that we use, he was setting up factories to produce these products for that we use on a daily basis. Okay, so we produce the products, we buy the products. All right. His plan called for creating the infrastructure to manufacture every marketable commodity in every big U.S. industrial center, as well as in Central America, the West Indies, and Africa, by black labor for blacks. Now, related endeavors included a grocery chain of grocery stores, a restaurant, and publishing house, among other businesses. Now, Garvey was convinced that blacks should have a permanent homeland in Africa also, so Garvey sought to develop Liberia. Now, we know Liberia was founded in 1821 in Africa by the American Colonization Society, okay, set up in Liberia. And this was set up basically as an experiment to send African Americans who wanted to go. This is free African Americans. This is back during slavery, 1821, to send them back to Africa. So Liberia is set up for that purpose, and the nation can be nowhere else but Africa. Okay. Now, the Liberia program launched in 1920, and it was intended to build colleges, universities, industrial plants, and railroads as part of an industrial base. However, the idea was abandoned in the mid-1920s after much opposition from European powers that had interest in Liberia. In response to suggestions that he wanted to take all Americans of African ancestry, or all African Americans, back to Africa, Garvey wrote, quote, "We do not want all the Negroes in Africa. Some are no good here and naturally will be no good there," end quote. Ashe. Some are no, because see, this is what I'm, because people, talk today about repatriating to Africa. I'm like, what do you have that's of benefit to Africa? If you're no good here, you're going to be no good there, most likely. And see, this is why Dr. John Henrik Clarke, and I agree with him. See, Dr. John Henrik Clarke used to say, don't come to me talking that nationalism. We want a nation, until you have acquired the skills that are necessary to manage a nation, to run a nation. Agriculture, oceanography. You have to understand how political economies work, the political structure. You need people in the skills of medicine. You need physicians. You need people in the skills of the sciences. You have to acquire the skills needed to manage a nation. Okay? Because it's easy to put on red, black, and green and say, we want a nation, we want a nation. Because you know the U.S. ain't going to give you a damn thing. It's easy to say, we want a nation, we want a nation. That's easy. It's harder to do the work to acquire the skills and acquire the skills to actually manage and maintain a nation and keep a civil war from breaking out. So Garvey has been credited with creating and basically, you know, people who say we need to go back to Africa, we need to leave, we need to separate. My solution to people who say we need to separate is go ahead and leave. It's pretty simple. Ain't no need to debate. Send me a postcard when you get there. Because see, most of them haven't acquired the skills necessary to do what it is they want to do. So you don't have to do a lecture about separating and stuff like that. My thing is, okay, you want to separate, go ahead and leave. The other thing we have to understand is that African people have been here in the land we call the United States of America. We've been here going back at least 51,700 years. That's why we need to read The First Americans with African Documented Evidence. This was our land stolen from us. We were here before Native Americans came into existence. So why should we be the ones that lead? I'm all for connecting with Africa, and some people want to repatriate. But this is our land also. Okay? We were here before Native Americans came into existence. So last hired, first fired. Last hired, first fired. Why should we be the ones that lead? Okay? Now, can you all still hear me on Facebook? Something's going on Facebook. I'm not sure what it is. Just a second. Let me see what's going on. And then can you all hear me on YouTube? We good on YouTube? Let me see what's going on here on Facebook. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, you can still hear me on Facebook. Okay, good. All right, let's continue. All right. Okay, so he launched the Liberia program, but this is going to be abandoned in the mid-1920s after much opposition from European powers. Now, Garvey, and once again, Garvey did not say all black people should go back to Africa. All right? No, he did not. Okay. All right, now, Garvey has been credited with creating the biggest or largest movement of people of African descent called the Pan-African Movement. At its height, the UNIA claimed over 1 million members. Okay, this movement that took place in the 1920s is said to have had more participation from people of African descent than the Civil Rights Movement. In essence, the UNIA was the largest organization in the Pan-African movement history, all right? And I've seen estimates of members up to 8 million worldwide. I've seen estimates of 4 million here in the U.S., okay, for Garvey. All right, now, in a memorandum, so what's going to take Garvey down is the mail fraud scandal, okay? The mail fraud scandal. All right. Now, Garvey's major audience included thousands of Southern African Americans who were migrating from the shadow of slavery and the plantation to the urban north, as I've talked about. And then you also had African American veterans of World War I, who were another audience for Marcus Garvey as well. Most of them had experienced both French equality, the equality in France when they were fighting over in France in World War I, and U.S. military bigotry, and returned home as militant race men. So, see, the other thing that you have going on is when these African American men come back from World War I, you have what's called the New Negro, 1919, 1920, the New Negro. And this was a new sense of pride among African American men, and they were called race men. And they were saying, look, we fought for this country. We're not going to come back and deal with the segregation, deal with the disrespect, deal with the dehumanization. We want all of our rights right now. We want to be treated like human beings, okay? So they were called race men, all right? And they were attracted to Marcus Garvey's UNIA, his calls, his speeches, things like this, all right? And the UNIA grew larger, still following also the race riots of the Red Summer of 1919 that I talked about as well, okay? All right. Okay, let's continue. And we're going to see that also the Negro world would develop a circulation of over 200,000 and published. It was published in 3 languages: Spanish, French, and English as well. And it was read on 4 continents. Okay. All right. So if we look at the mail fraud scandal, okay, it's going to take Garvey down. In a memorandum dated October 11th, 1919, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the General Intelligence Division of the Bureau of Investigation, wrote a memorandum to Special Agent Ridgely regarding Marcus Garvey. This is October 1919. In the memo, J. Edgar Hoover lamented the fact that, quote, he, referring to Garvey, has not as yet violated any federal law whereby he could be proceeded against on the grounds of being an undesirable alien from the point of view of deportation. Okay? He has not yet violated any federal law whereby he could be proceeded against on the grounds of being an undesirable alien from the point of view of deportation. So he's saying he's mad because Garvey hasn't broken any laws yet. Okay? So let's set him up. So sometime around November 1919, an investigation by the Bureau of Investigation, okay, was conducted on the activities of Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. All right. So the Bureau of Investigation, the best that I could tell, and I was on the FBI's website today researching the history of the FBI. It appears that the BOI, the Bureau of Investigation, was the precursor to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Okay. So the BOI, the Bureau of Investigation, hired James Amos, Arthur Brent, Thomas Jefferson, James Jones, and Earl E. Titus as its first 5 black agents. Although initial efforts by the Bureau of Investigation were to find grounds upon which to deport Marcus Garvey as, quote unquote, an undesirable alien, because Garvey was not a citizen of the U.S., okay? So if you commit a crime, you're convicted of a crime, after you're sentenced, after you serve your sentence, you're deported, okay? So they're trying to find something to get Garvey on. All right? So a charge of so although initial efforts by the Bureau of Investigation were to find grounds upon which to deport Garvey as an undesirable alien, a charge of mail fraud was brought against Marcus Garvey in connection with stock sales of stock, sales of shares of the Black Star Line, which was the line of steamships, okay? And this was after the U.S. Post Office and the Attorney General joined the investigation, all right? So the accusation centered on the fact that the corporation had not yet purchased a ship, purchased a ship. Just a second here. Okay. All right, so the accusation was that the hold on, where are we? Okay. So the accusation centered on the fact that the corporation, the Black Star Line, had not yet purchased a ship with the name Phyllis Wheatley. Had not yet purchased the ship with the name Phyllis Wheatley, although one was pictured with the name emblazoned on its bow on one of the company's stock brochures. It had not actually been purchased by the Black Star Line and was still registered with the name Orion. So what it's saying, Orion. So what it's saying is, wait a second, you're advertising on your stock certificate this ship named Phyllis Wheatley, but you don't have a ship named Phyllis Wheatley. This is what they're saying, okay? And you're selling these stocks, you're mailing them to people. So they're saying he's using the U.S. Postal Service to create mail fraud. This is the accusation. The accusation centered on the fact that the corporation, the Black Star Line, had not yet purchased a ship with the name Phyllis Wheatley, although a ship named Phyllis Wheatley is pictured on the stock certificate, okay, and on the company stock brochures, is what they're saying, okay. Now the prosecution produced as evidence a single empty envelope that it claimed contained the brochure that they're using to market the sale of the stocks, okay. During the trial, a man by the name of Benny Dancy, B-E-N-N-Y, Benny Dancy, testified that he did not remember what was in the envelope, although he regularly received brochures from the Black Star Line. Another witness from the prosecution, named Schuler Cargill, C-A-R-G-I-L-L, perjured himself after admitting to having been told to mention certain dates in his testimony by Chief Prosecutor Maxwell S. Mattuck, M-A-T-T-U-C-K. Furthermore, he admitted that he could not remember the names of any co-workers in the office, including the timekeeper who punched employees' time cards. Ultimately, he acknowledged being told to lie by the postal inspector named F.E. Shea, the initials F.E. Shea. Okay? So, Schuler Cargill said that F.E. Shea, the postal inspector, told him to say that he mailed letters containing the purportedly fraudulent brochures. Now, the Black Star Line did own and operate several ships over the course of its history and was in the process of negotiating for the disputed ship at the time the charges were brought. They were in the process of negotiating the purchase of the ship, which was going to be called Phyllis Wheatley, okay, at the time that these charges are brought. Now, of the four Black Star Line officers charged in connection with the enterprise, only Marcus Garvey was found guilty of using the mail service to defraud prospects. Now, his supporters called the trial fraudulent. While there were serious accounting irregularities within the Black Star Line and the claims he used to sell Black Star Line stock could be considered misleading, the prosecution was a politically motivated miscarriage of justice, all right? And what's going to lead up to this prosecution, what's going to lead up to the prosecution taking place is that Garvey is going to have a meeting with a leader of the Ku Klux Klan named Edward Young Clark. And Garvey having this meeting is going to garner the wrath of civil rights leaders at the time. Okay, so Garvey naively believed that the UNIA and the Ku Klux Klan could work together since they both supported the goal of racial purity. Edward Young Clark, the KKK leader, in fact, did promise some financial assistance to the UNIA because, hey, he's talking about that, taking some African Americans back to Africa. So KKK is like, that sounds good to us. We'll help you pack. All right. So after hearing of this meeting, however, Dr. W.B. Du Bois, who was the leader of the NAACP, he wasn't the chairman of the NAACP, okay, but he was a leader in the NAACP. He also was the editor of the Crisis magazine. He would use the Crisis to attack Garvey, okay. Dr. W.B. Du Bois called Marcus Garvey the greatest enemy of the Negro race. The Urban League, the organization, the Urban League, called Marcus Garvey, quote unquote, he called him a swindler. And Black Union leader A. Philip Randolph, Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, said that Marcus Garvey and Garveyism should be purged from American soil. Now, various civil rights organizations now mounted a coordinated effort. It was a campaign called Garvey Must Go, Garvey Must Go. And the Justice Department seeking to discredit Marcus Garvey because it felt he represented a threat to colonial interests and menaced racial peace in the U.S. They hired they hired the first black officers to infiltrate his organization, okay, and set him up, all right? So it's very interesting how you have these African-American leaders who are going to turn on Garvey and go to the authorities to get this guy to get this guy set up, to get him deported. I'm not saying they went to the authorities to say set him up, but they wanted him gone. Okay, the authorities, the Bureau of Investigation, they're going to set up Garvey. All right, so Garvey's trial is in 1923. When Garvey's trial ends on June 23rd, 1923. And Garvey was sentenced to 5 years. He's found guilty, sentenced to 5 years in prison. So he initially spent 3 months in jail, in Toombs jail, awaiting approval of bail. Okay, waiting approval of bail. And while on bail, he continued to maintain his innocence because he's also appealing the case as well. Okay, so while on bail, he continued to maintain his innocence, and he's traveled. He's going to speak and organize the UNIA. After numerous attempts at appeals that were unsuccessful, Garvey's going to be taken into custody, and he spends 2 years at Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Okay, and so he starts his sentence February 8th, 1925. Okay, now 2 days later, he penned his well-known first message to the Negroes of the world from Atlanta prison. First message to the Negroes of the world from Atlanta prison. And in this message, he makes his famous proclamation, "Look for me in the whirlwind or the storm. Look for me all around you. For with God's grace, I shall come and bring with me countless millions of black slaves who have died in America and the West Indies, and the millions in Africa, to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life." To aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. Okay. All right. Now, so Garvey's sentence is, as I stated earlier, so Garvey's sentence is going to be commuted by President Calvin Coolidge. In 1927, Calvin Coolidge is going to commute the rest of Garvey's sentence. Garvey spends 2 years in prison. Okay, when his sentence is commuted, he's released from prison.
Yeah.
All right. He's going to be deported back to Jamaica, and he was deported via New Orleans to Jamaica, where a large crowd met him at Orange.
Yeah, same difference. It's just it's an older photograph, and they use a really bright flash when they took the picture. So yeah, I'm just trying to mentally Photoshop it to make it a little more warmer. Like I said, it does look cool and pale a little bit. So just trying to add a slight warmness to some of the colors.
And Garvey called Dubois, quote, purely and simply a white man's N-word, white man's Negro, white man's N-word, and a little Dutch, a little French, a little Negro, mulatto, monstrosity. This is what Garvey said of Dubois. All right. Now, this led to an acrimonious relationship between Garvey and the NAACP and Dr. W.B. Du Bois, and Garvey accused Du Bois of paying conspirators to sabotage the Black Star Line to destroy his reputation. Du Bois was nevertheless a strong supporter of Pan-Africanism. And when you read Pan-Africanism, you read Pan-Africanism for beginners, you find out that Dr. W.B. Du Bois was also a Pan-Africanist. Okay. And
That's what's up, man.
all right.
Had to take a snack break. Had the munchies.
So, Garvey is the president who start losing momentum. In 1929, Garvey was elected counselor for the Allman, Allman Town Division of the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation.
Whoa.
He lost his seat, however, when he had
Drop the camera. I dropped the camera.
1930, he's already deported now. He's in Kingston, Jamaica. He's in Jamaica. In 1930, he was re-elected unopposed along with 2 other candidates as well. Now, in April of 1931, Garvey launched the Edelweiss Amusement Company, Edelweiss Amusement Company, Edelweiss. And he set this up to help artists earn their livelihoods from their craft.
Yeah, you should literally paint yourself like I do. I paint myself a lot.
Bam and Bam and Randy Williams went on to become popular after receiving initial exposure.
I just dropped off a whole series of self-portraits I did.
Marcus Garvey. In 1935, Garvey is going to go to.
Yeah, and this is a commission. So as soon as this one is done, it's getting shipped off to its new home.
Now, during these last years, in war-torn Ethiopia, because we know that
I just did a bunch of naked pictures of myself.
So Garvey keeps up events in war-torn Ethiopia and also the West Indies. In 1938, Garvey gave evidence before the West Indian World Commission on the conditions there. In 1938, he set up the School of African Philosophy in Toronto to train UNIA leaders. The School of African Philosophy, Toronto. This was 1938. He continued continued his work on his magazine called The Black Man. Now, let's see here. Okay. So Garvey in 1910, Garvey in 1940, June 10th, 1940. Garvey is going to pass away after suffering from two strokes, okay? And due to travel conditions during World War II, he was interred not in Jamaica, but in London.
Yeah, his body is in fucking Europe, yo. Marcus Garvey.
Later exhumed and taken to his home country of Jamaica.
Yeah, that shit was crazy.
On November 15th, 1964, the government of Jamaica proclaimed Marcus Garvey Jamaica's first national hero. Okay, so that's some background information of Marcus Garvey and his influence. He had an influence in the Rastafari movement, huge influence of Pan-Africanism. He was not the founder of Pan-Africanism. Okay, Pan-Africanism starts sometime in the 18th century, starts here in the U.S. and the Caribbean. But he was a huge influencer of Pan-Africanism. Okay, and Pan-Africanism basically just means that it operates based on the principle that all African people should unite, even though we may have different colonizers. Okay, one colonizer may have been the French, one may have been the Germans, one may have been the English. Even though we speak different languages, we still have commonality in our history, and we understand that our future is a connected future. We have to unite, because and the future relies upon African people uniting as well. Okay, all right. Now, some of the people who were influenced by Marcus Garvey were Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana. Ghana wins its independence in 1957. But Kwame Nkrumah named the national shipping line of Ghana the Black Star Line in honor of Marcus Garvey. Okay, and the UNIA. And in 1965, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife Coretta Scott King, when they visit Jamaica, they lay a wreath at a shrine for Marcus Garvey as well. There's an article from AtlantaBlackStar.com, another article, AtlantaBlackStar.com. That's really, really good articles. I encourage everybody to check them out, AtlantaBlackStar.com. Also check out YourBlackWorld.net. Okay, but AtlantaBlackStar.com had an article, 10 leaders you may not have known were influenced by Marcus Garvey. 10 leaders you may not have known were influenced by Marcus Garvey. Okay, and one of them is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. During a trip to Jamaica on June 20th, 1965, civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife Coretta Scott King made it a point to visit the shrine of Marcus Garvey. Okay, and in a speech, Dr. King told the audience that Garvey, quote, was the first man of color to lead and develop a mass movement. He was the first man on a mass scale and level to give millions of Negroes a sense of dignity and destiny and make the Negro feel he was somebody. This is what Dr. King said about Marcus Garvey. Okay? So most people that talk about Dr. King and speak negatively about Dr. King never studied Dr. King. All right? Dr. King was influenced by Marcus Garvey as well, and he paid honor and respect to Marcus Garvey also. So check out this article, 10 leaders you may not have known were influenced by Marcus Garvey. Okay? Also, they talk about Elijah Muhammad, Kwame Nkrumah, Malcolm X. We know that Malcolm grew up hearing speeches of Garvey, hearing his father was a Garveyite. His parents were Garveyites, so he grew up in this. He grew up going to UNIA meetings, things like this. All right. Okay. Okay. So on Facebook, Mindy said great information. Melvin, how you doing, Melvin? Melvin said MLK was for our people. Eric said they didn't want you knowing Dr. King supported Garvey. Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. King admired Garvey, but at the same time, Dr. King did not hate Malcolm X. Dr. King liked Malcolm. Malcolm liked Dr. King when you really get down to it. Okay? They did not hate each other. All right, these are division. These are tactics of division to make us think that these each other and should choose, between the two. No, I claim Malcolm and I claim Dr. King. I just don't have a picture of Dr. King back here, but I claim Malcolm and Dr. King. All right. And it's important to understand Dr. King met a few months before he was assassinated. Dr. King met with Elijah Muhammad. All right. And Dr. King in 1968, during the Poor People's Campaign, Dr. King talked about the importance of land and how land was a necessity. Okay. And let's see, in 1968, Dr. King spoke in a rural Mississippi church, and he put land, the need for land, front and center. Dr. King said, at the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest. Okay? This is after slavery ended. We see it taking place in 1862 with the Homestead Act of 1862. The U.S. during the Civil War, the U.S. is giving away millions of acres of land.
Giving people land.
Immigrants coming to this country. Basically, all that land goes to white people that are giving away. But then you're going to have a Southern Homestead Act of 1866 giving away more land, and we're basically shut out of that also. Okay, so in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself up by his own bootstraps. This is what we are faced with, and this is a reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we're coming to get our check. This is the Poor People's Campaign that Dr. King was working on when he was assassinated, April 4th, 1968. This is what Dr. King was working on. Okay? So read How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. This is the second edition. I have the third edition in my backpack. I have all three editions. But that segment of the speech from Dr. King is in all three editions, okay? How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy, all right? Turtle Island, Turtle Island, they talk about that in the first Americans were Africans documented evidence. That's one of the original names of this land, this landmass. It was called Turtle Island. Okay. All right, so how's everybody doing here? Hey, how you all like this type of information? Okay, we got Melvin, and he did it under the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, how you all like this type of information? All right, so if you like this type of information, also you can, if you want to, you can donate to the African History Network. That helps us out a lot. It helps us to keep doing the research, stay on the air, pay the bills, keep broadcasting. You can donate to paypal.me/the AHN show. Paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay? 15, 20, 25, whatever you want to donate. We appreciate that. If you want to set it up for a recurring donation each month, you could do that as well. paypal.me/the AHN show. You can also order DVDs from our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we have, I teach online classes. We have them all on demand right now. They're all on demand. We have a 10-course bundle pack where we deal with a lot of history. It includes the course Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That is a 14-hour, 7-session online course that I've taught. We deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. We deal with a sequence of historical events leading up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Because you have to understand this chronology. When I teach, and the way I was taught, some of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, Professor Kaba Kamene, they approach it chronologically, okay? And I don't just deal with 500 years of history, I deal with 50,000 years. So we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. We deal with a lot of information here, okay? And we deal with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years as well, okay? So we don't just deal with slavery. All right, so that's on sale, $60, regularly $130, 10-course online bundle pack. It also includes Great African Women in History, The Mothers of Civilization, Great African Women in History, The Mothers of Civilization, African American Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump, Voter Suppression, Reparations, and How Elections Have Consequences. That's a deep presentation I've done dealing with Trump, Richard Nixon, how Trump is reversing policies President Obama had in place. I deal with similarities between how Richard Nixon became president and how Donald Trump became president. And similarities because Trump is going to fall just like Richard Nixon fell also. Richard Nixon was the first sitting U.S. president to resign from office. He resigned August 9, 1974. Even though articles of impeachment were drawn up against Richard Nixon, he was not put on trial, okay? Richard Nixon resigned from office August 9, 1974. The first article of impeachment was obstruction of justice. The second article of impeachment was abuse of power, which sounds just like Donald Trump, okay? So, in the course we talk about Dr. David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence as one of our sources. And page 14 of his book, he deals with the African presence found in Allendale County, South Carolina, that goes back 51,700 years. In 2004, Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina, made a discovery in Allendale County, South Carolina. And they discovered artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools, okay? They found 13 different disciplines thoroughly documenting the African presence in this country we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago, all right? And here is Dr. Albert Goodyear here. This is an article from ScienceDaily.com, from November 18, 2004, 14 years ago. And this article deals with his discovery. And it says, here's a summary of what the article says. The article is entitled, New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 Years Ago. And a summary of the article says, radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. So when these discoveries take
New Devour grilled cheese sandwiches. Devour the taste of your dreams.
This case here was found right above the 50,000-year-old date. Again, here is the cortex, the stuff that, and this cushions. It's not that easy to break this. So the idea that these guys can rumble down the hill and somehow self-assemble on this stretches credulity. And this is not weathered, like the whitish yellow stuff.
Right.
And the Clovis points are whitish yellow, because they've been in the upper core of a lot of oxygen. This has been in a waterlogged soil. You dive into the Sand River today, and you pick up a boulder of chert, and you crack it open. Remember, it's been sitting there 20 million years. It will look like that, because it's underwater. And the normal processes that occur in the atmosphere, the topsoil, in some sense, is in the atmosphere. It has oxygen and it has it would degrade this. So when we first started finding artifacts down there, I thought, man, this looks like it's made in the late Archaic. It's so fresh. And then I realized you've had high groundwater from time to time. And you'll see these sediments when we get there. So people don't have too much trouble, except the fact that it's an extremely old deposit, realizing this is very high quality toolstone, and there's repeated subtractions off the edges. In fact, here's some of the clay of the terrace. This contrasts mightily with the blue sands that some of that came from. And what you can find is 3 areas of repeated battering. And this happens, we know, from modern flint knackers. They beat, and nothing comes off. So they go find another place. Here's one where they beat. So in order for nature to produce these battering, this thing would need legs or some means of crawling back up on the side and plunging off into the abyss.
Yeah. At least have a mind of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I tell, there's 3 areas, here's a 3rd area there.
Yeah.
So these are repeated blows. And I think a lot of times when people see the quality of the earth, who aren't familiar with these heavily loaded tertiary age, they look at this and go, oh, well, yeah, I can see somebody using this. But all that stuff in here used to look like this.
Right.
We know that from the Clovis and post-Clovis. So as I tell people, I'm not saying that something didn't roll down the hill and chemically weaken in 100,000 years of weathering. Sure. After all, mountains end up being soil, right? So I understand that. But I say, some assembling is required. Nature, letting a rock, voila, we have fake tools.
Yeah.
Along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. So when these discoveries take place, they keep having to push the dates back, okay? And the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. They keep having to push the date back. Juvenile had a song back in like 1998 called Back That Thing Up. When these new discoveries come out, they keep having to back that thing up. They keep having to back the dates up, okay? They keep having to back the dates up. All right, now, let's continue here. Okay, so we deal with a lot of archaeological discoveries that have taken place over the past few years. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. What the Moors taken to Europe, they're taking the teachings from ancient Kemet, from ancient Egypt into the Dark Continent, which was Europe. Europe, goes into the Dark Ages, 5th century A.D., 476 A.D., the Valens and the Visigoths crushed the western portion of the Roman Empire. And when the Moors go in, these teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, are going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. And we see the symbol of those teachings, right? We see it in the Washington Monument, which is 555 feet tall. We know that 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence in 1776 were Freemasons. We know that Freemasonry is a watered-down version of the teachings coming out of ancient Egypt, coming out of ancient Kemet, okay? And we know, okay? And we know that when we see the Washington Monument, that's a Tekken, okay? Tekken Nu for plural. And there were approximately 1,200 Tekken Nu built in ancient Kemet in ancient times, but only about a dozen exist today. They're taken to, London, Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey, Vatican City, things like this. But it's a symbol of resurrection coming from the representing Asar or Osiris, coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru, okay? Also known as the First Holy Trinity, all right? And we know that the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and son, meaning child of light. And this was the title child of light, or sons and daughters of light, were first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples in ancient Kemet, okay? All right, so we deal with thousands of years of history in this online course, ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? So you can, in the bundle pack, there are actually 10 courses in the bundle pack, all right? Okay, so you can register for that. It's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's all on demand, so you can watch at your own pace. It's on sale right now, $60, regularly $130. And we'll post it again here on the thread of broadcast on Facebook and also here on YouTube, okay? We got to get out of here. I'm going to answer your questions offline, so you can post your questions here. We only have like 2 hours. This time's out at 2 hours. So I'm broadcasting through Crowdcast. And in these presentations, I do PowerPoint presentations. We have video clips, all this stuff, okay? All right, so we have to get out of here. Hopefully this helped. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Post your comments. And be sure to, those in Atlanta, I'll be in Atlanta June 15th through the 17th for the Juneteenth celebration at Morris Brown College. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the information there. Okay. If you want to donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, or visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button. Hey, remember at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correcting wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. Right now it's correcting wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take a little break too, guys. That lecture was pretty good. Learned a lot about Marcus Garvey. Apparently, somebody is trying to get Trump to pardon him for the mail fraud crime that he was accused of and sentenced to 2 years in prison for. Oh, snap. But it is Saturday, and I'm just about to chill for a bit. So I got about 2 good hours of painting in this morning. I'll probably go play the game for a couple hours and watch TV for an hour or so, and then I'll be back in here later on today. It's still pretty early in the daytime. Let's see. Yeah, it's not even 10 o'clock yet. So I'll be here later on this afternoon working on this commission a little bit more. When I come back, I'll try to finish up his shirt. Here you can still see the dark portion of the forearm of his sleeves is where I'm stopping off at. So it's kind of like a line. A line is right here, so I gotta come down. But I did get some more highlights and try to soften the shirt up, the top a little bit. Yeah, so that's basically my plans for today is just to apply the second layer of paint to this. Like I said, just slowly brighten it up and get some more wrinkles and details in the shirt, and then start working on some highlights. There's a bunch of folding chairs back here, and my man I guess he thinks I'm not gonna paint the ashtray, but yeah, there is an ashtray on that table back there that I have to get in here. So I'll be working on all of that later on today too. But I am going to stream my gameplay. So I'm gonna go get on some Ghost Recon Wildlands. And if you guys want to see me get my ass kicked in some first person shooters, you can definitely tune in to my video game stream. I said I'll probably game for like an hour or so, because it is Saturday and I ain't really got shit else to do. I only like painting for a few hours at a time. I know some people say, oh, I paint 17 hours today. Really? How do you give your eyes time to adjust and see issues and problems? I like to paint for like 2 or 3 hours, step back from it, go do some other shit, and come back and look at it again. Like, oh, I see where I need to change some shit. Just if I stare at this shit for too long, it doesn't look like I'm really making a lot of progress or I'm not seeing things properly. So I always like to give myself time in between my paint sessions. All right. Damn, I hope I didn't get up too early, Phil. Might have to take a nap today. Your boy might need a nap. Like I said, I'm about to go downstairs and get on a game, yo. Catch you down there. Peace.